Greetings and welcome back to the Mount Rushmore podcast. After a short hiatus in which we were dealing with life stuff, Richard, how's it going?
It's going okay.
And Michael, how are you doing?
Oh, look how brief that was. That was so succinct.
We're
I'd like
dusting
to,
off our
yeah.
microphones. You like to
What
what?
what did you say before we started recording? This is the brand new.
It's
Mount-
the all new Mount Rushmore Good Time Variety
Can I
Hour.
run down the list? Can I run down the list
Absolutely,
of things
man.
that's prevented
Yeah.
us from recording? So it was first a child sickness, my child. Then COVID flu shot was just poorly scheduled, the wrong time that we were supposed to record. Then child sickness again. Then a nap.
That's on me.
That one's on you. Just a nap. It's just you just happened to not wake up in time, which is great. And I think Richard and I that day were like, "So be it." Oh, I
Yeah,
wish
wish I
one
could
of
do
us-
that.
we were both so envious of you. Then a toxic mold issue, a
That was
20th wedding anniversary.
That was also me. Not related. Not at
Yeah.
the same time.
My birthday, and here we are squeezing one in right before Thanksgiving. I mean, it could have been like, I'm out of town, I'm traveling, but I'm so happy to be back and record with you guys an episode that has been, boy, like 6 weeks at least in the making. It
It's been
feels like-
parboiling.
I
This is
guarantee it's not going to be any better.
The topic was a Richard Manfredi choice, and it's going to be lumped in the many, many music topics that we have out on our website, the award-winning Mount Rushmore podcast website. What is the music topic, Richard?
It is musical artists that sounded like no one else when they first started.
Cool. What inspiration?
I love that.
The caveat.
Yeah,
The
when they
caveat?
first started, I didn't realize that was in there too, but I'll have to adjust.
Well, I mean, the point is, these are artists that when they first came out, they didn't sound like anybody else.
Mm.
Now, maybe over the years, they wound up becoming influential, and you can hear
Others
their
sounded like
influences
them.
in other music.
Okay.
But when they first started out, they really didn't sound like anybody else that was out there.
Yeah. Like once Tiny Tim came out, then all of a sudden everybody, Dylan, the
Hold
Beatles,
on.
the
I'm
Stones.
trying to
Oh, sorry.
decide whether I'm going to talk about Tiny Tim now or not.
Yeah, thanks for
what?
blowing it, Jeff.
Hold on.
I should.
You know what? Maybe that can be Jeff's choice. I'm going to scratch Tiny Tim. Go ahead.
All right. Well, then I won't say anything else. So why don't we just get started? So that's a great choice, and I no doubt we might hear one of your choices is the artist that inspired this. Is often the case. So,
Indeed.
Michael, if you're ready after redoing your lineup, what would you like to come out with?
Okay, my first choice is the band Primus.
Also on my list.
Wow.
Super. Now, I think that the thing about Primus that is so interesting is a lot of my choices seem to have a very similar kind of note about them, pardon the pun, but a similar aspect of what I think makes them interesting. With Primus, it's like this combo feature of this weird funk thrash metal thing where he sings about like growing up in this horrible town of El Sobrante and all of like the cast of weird characters that seem to come around, set to this just, really funky bass driven metal that I don't think any band sounds like or has ever sounded like, where the bass is like the primary musical instrument. And then he's just got this weird voice that like pierces through like the heavy bass, like strings that slap. It's just like this kind of nasally, weird, complaining, loopy,
Grating.
Obnoxious, but like these two things working in tandem. I don't think has anybody ever gone out and said, I need to sound like Primus? I think they exist in this weird metal verse of their own where it's like, you know what? They're just gonna Les Claypool's gonna just do his thing, and I don't want to sound like that, and I'm not even gonna try to get anything close to that I find so fascinating.
Yeah, they're like a metal funk jam band,
Mm-hmm.
which is just a weird ass combination of words to string together to explain somebody. And it sounds like Les Claypool's bass has been thrown into a cement mixer and
Uh-huh.
then amplified.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's sort of what that sounds like. And I mean, as a bass player, I just, it's just unique the way he plays because he does, not only does he do a lot of the slap and popping type of stuff, but he does a lot of what he does is like the finger tapping,
Mhm.
kind of the Yingwei Malmsteen sort of,
Mm. Mhm.
but he does that on the bass. So it creates all these weird, like he's hitting four strings at the same time and all
Mhm.
these weird tonal and atonal things that are happening with his playing, Les Claypool. Then you got the guitar player who's just noodling in the background, and the poor drummer has to try and like figure out how to keep some sort of rhythm and make some sort of sense of this madness that's going on around
Mhm.
him. I appreciate the musicianship that's at play here because without without them, all three of them being really strong musicians, this just devolves into like bad high school jam band.
Hmm.
You know, some of the bunch of kids in their garage trying to learn how to play an instrument. That's kind of what it would sound like.
Yeah, Primus almost seems like an act that might more easily be compared to a visual art, like an abstract Picasso or something like that, than another musical artist. I also wonder if here's a question in regards to what the category isn't. Now, we didn't necessarily say pop music or rock and roll or anything like that,
Hmm.
but I know within the
Right.
realm of popular entertainment, it is not always commercially viable to be unique. And
Sure.
yeah,
True.
or unless I'm wrong, was there ever a time, do you think, when somebody found it strategic to be absolutely um, indiscernible from, or sorry, distinct from anything out there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Primus were really commercially successful
Mhm.
for a long time. I mean, they had top 10 albums and like, big alternative rock radio singles.
Yeah,
But
certainly like Winona's Big Brown Beaver was like,
that was all over the radio, yeah.
yeah, I mean, and super kind of poppy and had like enough airplay and enough music video play that um it made them like just well known,
Mhm.
certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and they were, and to your point, Jeff, they were visually interesting. And Les Claypool's just a weird looking dude.
Mhm.
When he plays bass and he gets his legs kind of like flailing all over the place and his arms, he looks like a their logo was a mosquito for a while, and I think
Uh,
that's because Les Claypool kind of looks like a big, tall, long, drawn out mosquito
mhm.
in some
Yeah.
ways. But I mean, to me, I if I were to try and say there's anyone that I could compare them to that had come before them, maybe like a Captain Beefheart
Oh, yeah. Okay.
with that kind of like really kind of like avant-garde but still
Mhm.
kind of pop
Yeah.
sensibility to it.
Mhm. Hmm.
That's the only thing I could think of that I could comparison that I could draw.
Mhm. Okay, cool. That's really interesting. So you both chose that. So Richard, what would be your second choice?
My second choice, I'll go with the band that got me thinking of this topic, and that's the B-52s.
Oh, wow. Wow. A
Great
lot of fun.
choice.
Yeah.
And when they came out in the 1970s, you can hear where some of their influences are from, but it's like it's this. Were they punk rock? Were they new wave?
Mhm.
Were they doing like this retro surf music?
Hmm.
When you listen to something like Rock Lobster, where do you what genre do you put that in? What category do you put that in? I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately, you look back on it today and you just say, "Oh, that sounds like a B-52 song."
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like B-52 song became its own genre of music
Mhm.
for this kind of like retro leaning, new wave, kind of punk influenced, very jaggedy, but at the same time very melodic in a lot of ways. And the harmonies of the B-52 girls. You
Mhm.
got Fred Snyder doing whatever the hell Fred Schneider is doing. It's just such a unique mix that I don't know that there's been another band. I don't know. They are uncategorizable.
Yeah.
for most of their career,
Yeah.
and I find that fascinating.
Who was it? Was it Kate Pearson's brother? I forget who the original guitarist was. There was uh, the unfortunately lost an early guitarist to HIV, and I
Yeah,
think uh,
Ricky Wilson.
Ricky
Ricky Wilson,
Wilson.
yeah.
Okay, so the fact that I think they were just people who maybe almost like a talking heads. It seemed like art students who found instruments and
Yeah.
decided
Right,
wanted to express their interest in certain themes and eras of popular culture through a sound and music, and learned enough how to play in order to get that across. And I think, yeah, like Ricky Wilson was a very percussive rhythmic guitarist versus a melodic trained guitarist. So
right.
he had just kind of like a they just kind of it's I think some of their early performances were almost like REM, where it's we wanted to have a party in Athens and we wanted everybody to come here and see our crazy outfits, and we had to be doing something, so we figured out it must be music. And then they evolved from there, from this kind of centerpiece for a beer bash to actual musicians and things like that. So, but yeah, I almost feel like when I saw the B-52s, they were a clarion call for me, because punk was the only outsider music that I had seen, but B-52s looked like what I had access to, which is thrift store garbage.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna wear a leather jacket and put a clothespin through my nose, but I could go buy a crazy, bolo tie and you
Hmm.
know bright colored clothing from the '50s and put that on. So
And they were fun,
yeah, absolutely.
right? Like in a way that punk rock wasn't,
Yeah.
or new wave hadn't quite hit yet at that point.
Hmm.
But that whole CBGB's kind of scene, kind of being dark and hip and cool. I mean, the B-52s made themselves kind of cool in their own way, but they sort of weren't. To your
Yeah.
point, they were kind of outsiders
Oh yeah.
in a lot of ways, and but they decided to have fun with that status instead
Mhm.
of they steered into it,
Yeah.
and they steered into it musically. You mentioned Ricky Wilson. I mean, he used a lot of unorthodox guitar tunings,
Hmm.
which again kind of I think speaks to that idea of kind of, okay, we're not really musicians here, but we want to try and make music. So what if we just change this around? Instead of having the usual guitar tuning, we tried it this way, and I played this chord, and it sounds like this. And
Yeah.
that's something that's different than anything else that you've heard out there. It just was unique.
Yeah, the only thing I could compare it to is like visual art, like the set of Pee Wee's Playhouse. That's what they sounded like, that wackadoodle thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that the B-52s never appeared in a Tim Burton film is kind of
Oh yeah.
surprising.
Yeah, they already had the hair. Yeah, they were like Mr.
Exactly.
Vaughn. Yeah, yeah. All right, Michael, what's your second one?
My second choice is the artist formerly and currently known as Bjork.
Oh wow,
Oh, yeah, nice.
who's
Um,
joining us in the podcast business from what I hear? I
is she
think
really?
yeah, Bjork's gonna have a podcast. Why'd you
Uh,
pick her?
well, I think that Bjork stands firmly as one of these artists who not only sounds differently from any other artist, um, with her voice, which kind of has this kind of wide range of sounds that um, can get very high in register. But like she also sings in Icelandic and English in a way that nobody else really does. I mean, even you can kind of say not sugar cubes, but Sigur Rós kind of does,
Mhm.
but it doesn't quite sound like Bjork. She kind of everything kind of mixes really um, so strangely. She came out of like having like these kind of post punk roots with the Sugar Cubes, and by the time she put out her first album debut, it had kind of started dipping into kind of a little bit of like club dance kind of sound. But then I guess what I think is most interesting about her is album to album, things don't sound the same. Like Bjork, if you look at Bjork's first album and listen to her most recent one that came out, like Bjork is still within all of it, but it doesn't sound like Bjork from 25 years ago. I think that she physically, or her at least appearance, is constantly evolving. I don't think anybody is trying to ever sound like Bjork, though. I think there's a lot of things that keep happening or at least that I've noticed with my choices, is that there are people that are kind of out there on their own island. Like she might pull in a lot of influences from a lot of things, and I think everybody does. One thing I started doing, Jeff, after you suggested it a few months ago, was listening to like the History of Rock and 500
Oh
songs
yeah, cool. Yeah.
podcast, and uh, it's amazing how much popular music that you think as identified to being connected to a certain person was written by somebody else, was written before, was performed half a dozen times by someone else. But I don't think that happens with someone like, maybe Bjork's influenced by a lot of different music, or she's influenced by nature. She's, her last album was all about like, I'm a mushroom. Let's have an entire album about like praising mushrooms and mushrooms that grow out of the dirt. It's like, okay, well, you're out there on your own, but I don't think anyone's going there and emulating what Bjork does. And I think that she sings in a way that is just so unique and thinks about things and processes music and processes things visually that is just so unique. There's Bjork's calling right now.
Exactly.
She's saying, "No, I don't."
I do not make weird music.
But it's funny because like I've definitely gone through like a roller coaster of like, Bjork used to be one of my favorite artists, and then she kind of fell out of fashion for me for like 10, 15 years, where it's just like, I literally couldn't listen to her music. I was just like, I don't like this. I don't like this at all, even though like maybe there are a couple elements in there, something I remember.
Yeah, she does seem like an artist who's using primary sources that aren't other artists or other music. She's, like you said, inspired by
a lot of
objects.
it's nature, a lot of
Yeah.
it's her kind of home country of Iceland itself, which Iceland is this weird island that really feels disconnected from the rest of the world. Like it doesn't feel like you can walk from one side to the other and they feel like a different part of everything. Feels different about being there, and so maybe it's just that's just an influence on her as a person.
Well, that's fascinating. Yeah, that's one thing. When somebody doesn't sound like anybody else, it's almost the blinders that they've had towards the rest of the music industry. I also wonder if an artist like Bjork, who has lived in the entertainment industry as a performer, as she was an actress, right, or something like that.
And also, she was also like a child performer.
Singer, yeah.
Like when she was, like 7 to 10 or something, she was like a huge pop star within Iceland. But she's always been making music. But yeah, I think when she, what was it? Eyes.
Writer.
What was it called? What was the movie? Dancer in the Dark.
Okay.
She took one foray into acting and then was like, I put all of myself in this. Now I'm done with it.
Yeah.
I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. Oh, God forbid if there was somebody who was going to sound exactly like Bjork and then they heard her album going, I was going to sound just like that. Oh, nuts. Well, we're taking our first intermission. Just want to invite you to kind of jump back in the swing of things with us and, share our episodes if you don't mind. The holidays are coming up. We've implored you before to give the gift of the Mount Rushmore podcast to your friends and family or enemies. And you can download all the past episodes, put them on a hard drive, give them to your family. Just send us money. Venmo, PayPal, Bitcoin. We'll take it all.
No, we don't take Bitcoin. No.
We don't?
No. FTX, yeah, no.
Okay, sorry. We don't take it. We're back. So what is your third choice, Mr. Manfredi?
All right, so I'm going to go with a band that I suspect probably influenced Bjork in many ways. And that is Kraftwerk.
Oh, awesome.
probably the OG electronic band.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for, because I would actually, my initial thought was Devo,
Hmm.
and then I thought, you know what, Devo kind of sounded like Kraftwerk though.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear that there would be no Devo if there wasn't Kraftwerk.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you who Kraftwerk sounded like before they came out.
Hmm.
This German band kind of and maybe there's a theme here of I'm kind of picking these groups that also seem to have a real visual element to them
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
beyond just the musical side of things. And Kraftwerk with their live shows and their kind of almost like robot, like they call it
Hmm.
robot music, and they kind of they're very reclusive, and they kind of have mannequins instead of themselves as in all their like press photos and everything like that. They don't do interviews, so they're very much
Just like me.
very much like
I
you.
don't do interviews.
I've never done an interview. So you can see like a band like Daft Punk, who kind of looked at Kraftwerk and said, "That's something we can do."
Yeah.
But musically, electronic drums and synthesizers, and this idea of being able to make music without completely modern instrumentation.
Hmm.
Um, just any Gary Newman, Human League, any of the new wave bands, you know, just it's incredibly influential. It's one of those. They talk about how was it the Velvet Underground only sold 75,000 records, but everyone who bought a Velvet Underground record started a band.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very much the same way with Kraftwerk,
Hmm.
and just musically, they it's so Teutonic and cold
Yeah.
that you can just hear a Kraftwerk song and instantly know exactly who that is.
Hmm. Hmm. Just to pause, is there? I was hearing some audio coming in, like the TV or something like that.
Oh, I unfortunately Sarah's in the other room.
Oh, okay. It's not that loud. I hesitated to comment on it because
That's
it's not
okay.
like distracting. Um, there was a, I absolutely concur. Uh, Dangerous Minds posted a article about a a band that could have influenced Kraftwerk, and it was some people who dressed up like robots from a visual standpoint, but they look like the Our Gang kind of robots, like the dryer hose for arms and stuff like that. But you're absolutely correct. They seem so um, distinct from that which came before, and almost it feels like they took the experiments of like a Robert Moog or Theremin and turned them
Right.
into an actual expression of 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 pop music, or at least music. So yeah, that's so cool. And I think if persons who like Newman, who were so influenced like by Bowie and Kraftwerk. Okay, so I think it's Winfield's third. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, Michael,
Uh,
what's your third?
my third choice is a band out of New York called Chibo Mato.
Oh
They're
wow.
a band with primarily two members, Yuka Honda and Miho Hattori, kind of Japanese expatriates who um, only put out a couple albums. I think they kind of came back to do um, kind of reformed in like the last kind of 5-10 years to tour and do stuff, but they put out only two albums. They're kind of like this Japanese trip hop alternative band um, that uh, maybe it's because uh, they're Japanese by birth, and that um, the way they sing songs sounds in English even sounds just a little bit off, or it sounds a little bit strained isn't the right word, but just kind of foreign. That the combination of that and their music being, at least for their first album, like primarily about food. It's very like the music is, there's a lot of um, feels very sample based, but I don't know. There's just no band that I think sounds like um, just doesn't sound like them.
Mhm.
And um, I'm trying to think if there's a band that came after. There probably is. It feels like something that has influenced a lot, or has a lot of influences from things, or it's like they're like a big salad bowl of ideas that somehow whatever they've kind of stirred up together um, seems to have worked. I know that later on, by their second album, like was it Sean Lennon or
Yeah, no, Sean Lennon.
Sean Lennon joined, and I think um, it added a bit more structure to what they were doing. But I don't know. I listen to Chiba Mato, and I always think they're definitely this kind of one of one. I don't think anybody is like them, and I should check out their third album, but I haven't yet.
That's a fun choice. I feel like I only know the one that was on that compilation of music videos of Cunningham. I forget which the one they had a music video that was forward and backward at the same time.
Sugar
Sugar
Water.
Water.
Sugar Water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your fourth one, Richard?
All right, my fourth choice. I'm going with the band Cake.
Oh wow, what a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, just a super fun band. Again, another band like the B-52s with kind of a
Mhm.
retro vibe to them.
Mhm.
Although I can't quite place exactly what their retro vibe is. It just sounds like it almost sounds like some like a. It sounds like someone in the Lawrence Welk Show band
Yeah.
dropped acid and started listening to these kids today
Yeah.
back in 1966
Yeah.
and decided to make an album with their
Yeah.
base knowledge of music, but trying to make it sound like Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band
Yeah.
or something like that.
I think they have a trumpet and
They have a trumpet.
they use what is that thing that they use so much? It's like it makes the rattling sound like a Sergio Leone soundtrack.
Oh,
um,
sure, yeah.
yeah.
It's and then the lead singer has this very kind of flat, distinctive vocal
Mhm.
style.
Yeah.
Everything sounds like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's not really even so much singing as he's a classic sing talker,
Yeah.
and
He and Fred Schneider should team up to do some sing talking together.
that would be fantastic.
A nasally sing talker and like a low, baritone droning sing talker. Get what's his name in there from Magnetic Fields, and have just some really deep bass sing talking too.
Uh,
Yeah, they uh they always have this like you mentioned the Sergio Leone. There's certainly some sort of like spaghetti western element to it with that kind of like deep guitar, like single
mhm.
note kind of twang twang
Mhm.
twang type stuff happening. But then the music's also fun and dancey and poppy and you
Yeah.
know, Short Skirt Long Jacket is
Yeah.
an amazing song.
Yeah. Rock and roll lifestyle, I think, came out at a time where like people like were discovering the Bare Naked Ladies and Weezer and Ben Folds that had some irony
Mhm.
in there, and then also I think like G Love, Special Sauce, like there was a little bit of almost speaking in. It didn't have to be an amazing vocalist, it just had kind of a
Mhm.
funny groove. Yeah, I did I tell you I worked for this is Jeff Cass. I worked for
Jeff
uh,
Cass.
a person, a very attractive woman who had dated John McCrae, the lead singer and songwriter, for many years and tormented him beyond belief with their on again, off again relationship. And she she said, "Yeah, Fashion Nugget. That's what he used to call me, because she was a model, and like every song on." Like most of his albums was about her,
Oh
and
wow.
she could trace everything back to this time she dumped him or this time
Mm.
whatever. So he definitely was kind of I one thing I loved about John McCrae and Cake was it almost sounds like you could do that. Like,
Yes.
man, I could I mean my friends could do that. um and he wasn't a rock star. In fact, he was asking how do you pay for that rock and roll lifestyle. Uh, yeah, that's funny. All right, well, what's your last one, Winfield?
My last choice is Tiny. No, it's not Tiny Tim. Uh,
Sorry, I blew that for you.
no, it's okay. Joanna Newsom.
Oh,
Joanna Newsom is kind of this uh, indie, harp playing, elfin.
Mm.
Very interesting
Mm.
singer.
Mm.
And she has a very strange voice that sounds like something out of like a Tolkien forest. Um, and she started putting out music in kind of like the kind of mid 2000s. Um, and her primary instrument is the harp. And like the harp is not a thing that like seems very convenient to play or to
Mhm.
be like the main instrument in your band, but she's just like an indie harpist. And it's very strange. And she kind of has, I'm trying to think of a way to describe her. Sometimes it's unlistenable.
Oh.
Sometimes the kind of the voice sounds a little bit childish, as if almost like she's can be singing about like teddy bears or something. But she totally sounds different than anything else I've ever heard. And it's not necessarily the most like, if you were to put it on to be like, you got to check this out, the person may check out. But there is something, but there is something about her and her voice and uh, her style of music. Um, this kind of pop music that is so,
Mhm.
um, I don't know, just so unique to. It's like something you'd hear in, I don't know. I think that mm, I don't know, like in a forest glade. That I find so fascinating, and it's very hard to describe. But I guess that's why we're singing it. We're kind of talking about these sorts of things. Is that sometimes there are artists that come out that you have to hear it to get it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you feel like Kraftwerk and maybe Bjork and it's Chibo Mato are making music not for dance floors or radios, but for films that don't even exist? You know, I feel like there's a cinematic nature to some of those artists.
Hmm.
And I also would guess that those artists, B-52s definitely, I don't know, probably Primus too. They had to appeal to media outlets and, they had to get past gatekeepers. And it seems like John and Newsom might even be kind of benefiting from this kind of new direct to streaming kind of world where you do your own thing, man. Somebody's going to find you.
I think there was a
Uh,
lot of music that definitely came out in like the post like boy band era between 1999 and 2002, 2003, where that was like dominating the airwaves so
mhm,
much. It feels like that happened with, rock music too had kind of reached kind of a staleness before there was kind of like that kind of post punk uh, Strokes sort of
mhm,
Interpol sort of
mhm,
yeahs revival of kind of New York um, independent rock and roll. And I think the same thing happened with kind of like Death Cab for Cutie sort of coming out of the Pacific Northwest with something that is rock and roll but kind of rejected the kind of sound of whatever alternative music had turned into.
mhm,
And I'm sure that there was also like around that time, because of, I don't know, let's say Napster and everything, probably like a fledgling indie scene where more music could get out into the open, more
mhm.
home produced stuff or more um, individualized stuff could be released. And um, maybe that's part of it,
Yeah.
that there's a because of the internet too, there was an avenue or there was an opening for somebody that had a kind of strange elfin like voice on
Mhm.
a harp that found a little bit of footing.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if they were it's something they started off for Eurovision and then made it made it over here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we did it. I can't believe it. We did it. We accomplished
See
it.
what a month. I mean, what do we got
Yeah.
coming up? We got Thanksgiving,
Yeah, Christmas.
we got
Christmas,
Christmas,
there's
New
nothing
Year's.
happening around the holidays, so should have plenty
Nothing
of time to
nothing
record.
to keep us busy. Want to thank any of our audience who has stuck with us over this break. I appreciate, or maybe we gave you a break and you're appreciative of that. So you're welcome. So let's go with some really kind of innovators in there. Let's go for Bjork. Let's go with Kraftwerk. Let's go with Primus, because you both said it. And I had never heard of Joanna Newsom, so that's opened my mind. So thank you for those great suggestions. And dudes, I missed you. I'm glad I got to talk to you and see your faces. Your beautiful faces. This has been the Mount Rushmore podcast. I'm Jeff.
I'm Richard.
Hi, Michael.
We did it. We did it.